I'm Tyler Osha, and I'm presenting on the impact of culture on emergency management planning and response. Diversity in America. The United States is often called a melting pot country, which means that it is made up of a variety of different cultures. Each culture reacts to things differently, especially disaster and emergency situations. According to Wayne Bergeron, in Cultural Considerations in Consequence Management and Emergency Response, there are 5 reasons why culture needs to be accounted for during emergencies. Culture is a predominant force in people's lives. The dominant culture serves people in various ways. People have both personal identities and group identities. Diversity within cultures can be vast and significant, and each individual and each group has unique cultural values and needs. And this is all basically saying that different groups prepare for emergency situations differently and cooperate differently with emergency officials based on their needs and beliefs. Different cultures respond differently to disasters. Due to the differences between cultures, some are less hesitant than others to adhere to emergency management plans and policies, and even the disaster response. A perfect example is seen in Dealing with Disaster by Sandra Snyder. While writing about Hurricane Katrina, Schneider recounted how Cajun communities were able to return to normal operations relatively quickly due to their cooperation with government officials as well as their emphasis on community and family. In contrast, many Hispanic families who had experienced the Mexico City earthquake denied offers to move to temporary housing after the Northridge earthquake in California, preferring local parks instead. This forced emergency managers to have to set up shelters at parks to accommodate these groups. Cultural competency. Emergency management officials are taught to treat every person, no matter their race or culture, exactly the same during an emergency response situation. They save lives above all else. Cultural competency is used to ensure that all ethnicities are treated equally and are able to receive the same care and emergency response. Emergency management then fills the linguistic and cultural needs of that group in a case-by-case basis. For example, Jewish people need to be buried as soon as possible after death, which is something that emergency officials keep in mind when responding to a disaster. Local culture and Hurricane Matthew. In 2016, I lived on a barrier island in Melbourne Beach, Florida, an area that was in the direct path of Hurricane Matthew, a Category 5 hurricane. The local residents had been through many major hurricanes in their lives and had survived with minimal damage in recent years. As a result, they developed a short memory and felt that damage would not be bad because it hadn't in the past. Many people decided to stay on the island even though local officials had ordered a mandatory evacuation. The causeway was closed down and the storm came in and delivered millions of dollars in damage. People died as a result of not evacuating. Most fatalities were caused by heart attacks and strokes, which could have been non-life-threatening if they had evacuated. The next year, Hurricane Irma came through, and emergency management officials were quick with providing satellite lines showing where the storm would go. So here we have a satellite of the storm. And in this tracker model, it shows it going directly towards Melbourne. In this picture, it shows the prediction for the flooding on the barrier island where I lived. So emergency management officials had been quick in providing information to the local residents. While emergency management officials were warning people about the danger of this storm, nature seemed fine. This picture shows the calm before the storm, which kind of gives people a false sense of comfort and making them not want to evacuate. As the storm came in, the Coast Guard closed off the beach and put up its hurricane flags. And then after the storm came through and everyone that evacuated was trying to get back on the island, we see emergency management officials right here directing the traffic back onto the island and making sure everything is stable and goes smoothly. So as you can see, emergency management happens right here in our backyard in Florida. Short memories and convenience. It seems as if people tend to have an "it could never happen to me" complex, meaning that when they see natural disaster scenarios unfold on the television, they think that something similar would never happen to them. This is, like I was saying with Hurricane Irma, where people thought that their property would never be destroyed and they would be fine, and they could just ignore evacuation notices. Another example of short memory is people rebuilding in floodplains and earthquake zones year after year. This land is much more risky and dangerous, but is in a desirable area, making people forget about the possible occurrence of a natural disaster. They also seem to be motivated by ease, not wanting to evacuate because it is a burden to their daily lives. These tendencies make it difficult for emergency management officials to plan when they know that some people will completely disregard their instructions. Thank you.